In 1215, in Europe, one of the most historic prison legislation was introduced in 1215 when King Henry John signed Magna Carta, which started that no man could be imprisoned without trial. So, so the main idea of King Henry John is the Magna Carta, which means no man could be imprisoned without trial. So as what we are doing now, um, we have justice system to prove that a person, whether it's he or she is guilty in a criminal behavior. So next, between 16th and 18th century in Europe, English prisoners become overcrowded and new penal measures started being implemented. Military pardon and penal transformation during the end of 18th century, over 50,000 prisoners were transported from England to penal colonies in North America and Australia. So English prisoners are being crowded, so they are being transported from England to penal colonies in North America and Australia. So next, 19th century in England. During the time prisoners started receiving more care, concept of rehabilitation was introduced and governs around the world, especially in UK and US. Started reconsidering their views on solitary confinement, which was primary source of the increased numbers of insane, suicidal, and catatonic prisoners. So beginning of 20th century World War. So the World War there is present. Germany in Nazi government brought the formation of large amounts of war prison camps and concentration camps. Most famous examples of those types of prisons happened during World War II, when Nazi government formed over 300 detention centers in which political opponents, so Jews, gypsies, criminals, and others were detained without judicial process. Majority of them was eventually killed on an unprecedented massive scale that is today estimated to be between 11 and 17 million people. So in the time of World War II, many prisons had died because of the chaos environment. So until the middle of 20th century, France and Russia, until this time, France continued their practice of penal colonies until the middle of 20th century, most notably in France, Guyana and its infamous prison Devil's Island. And Russia also used remote penal colonies in the frozen northeast Serbia. So they will use um, high tech high technology in sentencing prisoners. End of the 20th century in 1991. So during the end of 20th century, modern prison system was finalized. Concept of prohibition service was introduced in 1991, and 3 years before the first prison intended solely for the holding of inmates in a permanent isolation. So they will become strict to the prisoners until such time prisoner will have um, will have will have proven that he or she is guilty until such time they will become in a permanent isolation. In in 2005, United States, supermax prison become widespread across the entire United States with over 40 of them being active in year 2005. Inmates in those prisons are held in the 23 hours long periods of cell isolation with occupation, communal yard time, work educational programs, and meals in cafeteria. So prisoners in the time of 2005 in United States, they are held in 23 hours long period in cell isolation. So they will become isolate in 23 hours, and but this system which has include um, yard time work and educational program and meals in cafeteria, which is better for the prisoners. So in 206 in 2006, United States, as the 2006, it is estimated that over 9 million people are imprisoned worldwide, with the United States leading the rate of incarceration 743 per 100 people. So imagine how many prisoners are there in a prison, um, because in 100% they in 74 per 1,000 people. So imagine how many the prisoners being cut into prisons. So next, the influence of the Roman Catholic. So this is the third topic. The influence of Roman Catholic. So the influence of religion and morality of criminal justice has been a major importance throughout years. Morality is society sets of accepted rules and norms of behaviors. Morality is command part religion beliefs. A primary rule of religion is to accept controls over the followers by setting the promoting rules and custom for people to follow. In turn, these rules help establish criminal laws in government and justice system. So, in the justice system, Roman Catholic influence as being insert because these matters will help to the prisoners to become more religious and tend to tend not to do a criminal behaviors. So the role of religion in heresy means in America's colonial society of the 17th and 18th century was clear crimes like blasphemy. So what is blasphemy? Blasphemy, blasphemy shows a lack of reverence towards God. So sexual defiance. And third is heresy, and which means holding a belief that conflicts with church doctrine. So they have many wars rise in 7th and 18th century. So earlier yet in old world execution was the favored means of punishing those who broke society's rules. In late enduring medieval times, Roman Catholic Church introduced incarceration or confinement as a prison as the alternative to death. So the idea of the church is when you get prison, when you get prison, a prisoner is more like a dead person. So the idea spread. The Protestant in Northern Europe established correction facilities. In the late 16th century, established correction facilities. 15th century was primarily to help those condemned the death repents. Since during medieval times, the Roman Catholic Church introduced incarceration as the alternative to death. So, as what I have mentioned, Church introduced incarceration as an alternative to death because mm, the human right is not being applied to themselves because um, prisons is very harsh and prisoners uh, they are very limited in their actions. So religion in correction. The influence and practice of religion in the correctional settings is old and history. Prison initial entry of religion into prison was probably carried out the religion men who themselves were in prison. The Bible stories of such prisoners include Joseph and Jeremiah in Old Testament, and John Baptist, Peter, John, and Paul in the New Testament, beginning in the days of Constantine and the early Christian church granted asylum to criminals who would otherwise have been mutilated or killed. So there are many people in the Bible as being mentioned in this page because uh, the church tends to relate or to give idea in the correction that will help and give spiritual value to the prisoners and the systems. Imprisonment under church jurisdiction become a substitute for corporal and capital punishment. In medieval times, the Roman Catholic Church developed penal techniques later used by secular states such as monastic cells and served as punishment place of criminal offenders. In 1593, the Protestant of Amsterdam built house of correction for women and one of men in 1603. So next, early settlers of North America brought with the custom and common laws. England includes the poetry, the stock and whipping post during 18th century. Isolating offenders from fellow prisoners became the accepted correctional practice. It was thought that a long-term isolation be combined with in a depth discussion with clearly with the lead inmates repent become penitent. Sorry for their sins. The term penalty was derived the where was derived. West Jersey and Pennsylvania Quakers were primarily responsible for many of the prison reforms. So it talks about reformation of the um, prisoners where they are the one centered of this system in order for them to have a better life in their time. Even during 19th century when daytime work was initiated by the Auburn system, solitary confinement at night was still the norm in correctional practice. The first the first solitary confinement was thought to serve the same repeating purpose as the older penitentiary belief in education as the tool of reducing criminal activity also assisted in the growth of religion imprisonment. So the education has being inserted in this slide because as what is mentioned, um, education will help the people not to do criminal behaviors, and through education it will be lesser in criminality in the society. Because of the limited budget of the Christian institution, chaplains were often called upon the sole educator in many American prisons. The schooling often considered the chaplain stand in a dark corridor with a lantern hanging from the cell bars while extolling a virtues of repentance. So many older correction institutions are being refurbished or destroyed, replaced with facilities designed for better observation and security. Yet the initial influence of religion on the philosophy and their design of the penitentiary will surely remain a correctional history. So the facilities are being built for the prisoners um, in order for their situation become comfortable. Next, so legal issues. In the first amending of the United States Constitution, it is stated that Congress shall make a no law respecting on an establish of religion. So, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, because of the amendment, state and federal correction institution must provide inmates with certain legal rights concerning the practice of religion. Among these rights are the opportunity to assemble for religious service, attend different denominational service, receive, visit, and ministers, correspond with their religious leaders, observe dietary laws, pursue name change, and obtain where to use religious paraphernalia of their rights. However, must supersedes the security consideration of the institution. So many religious services will come up into this system. So from religious ministers, religious paraphernalia being attached by the prisoners. So this idea will very helpful for the prisoners in order to utilize the religious relationship. So many of the leaders court cases that provide current guidelines for the practice of religion in America prison were decided during 1960s and 1970s. Until then, legal issues related to religious inmates were rarely brought before the courts. Among the most important cases during the period of Forward v. Clemmer in 1962, Copper v. Pate in 1964, and Cruz v. Beto in 1972. In the Flowood 1962 case, the United States District Court for the District Columbian ruled that the correctional official must recognize the Muslim faith as the legitimate religion and not the restrict and those inmates who wish to hold service. So uh, they will centralize and they will give concerns about the Muslim faith and legitimate religion.